Hello, everyone, and good morning. I want to thank you all for joining our Unshame Kentucky campaign today and joining us in our webinar titled Calls to Action, Tools to Foster an Inclusive Environment. Quick agenda items that we're going to go over today. We'll do our welcome and housekeeping items, as well as give you all a little insight about our Unshame Kentucky campaign, an overview of our webinar. We'll introduce our panelists. Then our panelists will go into their discussions. And then about 10 minutes before the end of the webinar, we're going to open up for questions and answers. And then we'll get into some closing remarks. So this webinar will be recorded and made available on our Unshame Kentucky Facebook and YouTube pages. All attendees will be muted. Please be sure to use our Q&A button at the top of your screen to ask any questions. You may also put any questions that you have for our panelists in the chat. To adjust your view and see all speakers and panelists, click View at the top of your screen and then select Speaker or Gallery. To access closed captioning, click More, select Language, Speech, and choose Turn on Live Captions. We also have live ASL. So a little overview over our campaign. Our Unshame Kentucky is an evidence-based behavior change intervention aimed to reduce the addiction-related stigma held by Kentuckians. The campaign is delivered by Shatterproof, a nonprofit organization committed to ending the addiction crisis in the United States, in close partnership with the Kentucky Opioid Response Effort, or CORE. This project is supported by CORE through the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. So for today's webinar, our panelists will discuss the vital issue of how to create inclusive environments in programmatic settings for treating substance use disorders and supporting people who use substances. This inclusivity includes, but is not limited to, people who identify as BIPOC, people who belong to the LGBTQIA+ community, people with physical and mental health conditions, people with language access needs. Our three panelists, along with our moderator, have various perspectives and will share both lived and professional experiences on this topic. Our wonderful moderator for today's webinar is Brittany Sneager. She is a dedicated and passionate advocate for those in recovery. She is proud to serve her community as the Community and Donor Engagement Coordinator at the Hope Center and One Parent Scholar House. She brings a unique perspective to her work, understanding the challenges and triumphs that will come with balancing family life and career dedicated to helping others. Through her role, she is committed to building strong relationships within her community, fostering support for individuals in recovery, and creating a network of resources to empower families facing similar challenges. She is honored to be able to make a positive impact in the lives of those she serves and looks forward to continuing to advocate for those in need. And I'm going to pass it over to our moderator to introduce our panelist.
Thanks so much, Taylor. I really appreciate it. So panelist number one, her name is Shanda Carell, and Shanda hopes to bring a unique and invaluable perspective to today's webinar. As a member of the LGBTQIA+ community and a person who is in long-term recovery from both substance use and mental health issues, Shanda has had firsthand experience with barriers faced by marginalized communities. Her journey in recovery has revealed the profound impact of not living authentically due to fear of rejection and judgment. She is dedicated to helping others overcome similar challenges by eliminating barriers to obtaining and maintaining long-term recovery. Her professional and personal experiences provide her with deep insights into the importance of inclusive care for BIPOC, LGBTQIA+, and individuals with physical and mental health conditions. With a loving wife, 3 daughters, and a grandson, her commitment to her family and community underscores her passion for advocating for inclusive and accessible recovery options. Hi, Shanda, welcome. We're so happy to have you. And then we have panelist number 2, Jada Reinhardt. Jada was raised in the south end of Louisville, Kentucky. She is a resilient advocate working as the Moore Assistant at Voices of Hope, a nonprofit organization. Having been in recovery for 3 years, she brings her lived experience to fight stigma against transgender women and individuals with substance use disorder. Jada's unwavering commitment to raising awareness, providing support, and promoting inclusivity for marginalized communities is fueled by her personal journey. Through her role at Voices of Hope, she aims to foster understanding, ensure access to essential resources, and inspire others with her story of hope, perseverance, and using her voice to drive positive change. Thank you so much, Jada. Welcome. Panelist number 3 is Soraya Sampson. Soraya is a passionate leader, speaker, and nonprofit professional, as well as a dedicated volunteer and advocate. Growing up in the foster care system, she was inspired to promote change from a young age and has utilized her unique experiences to shape the community she serves. At Young People in Recovery, Soraya serves as the Director of Strategic Equity and Inclusion and has focused her tenure on promoting equitable access to peer recovery support services for everyone who needs them, as well as educating the public on the effects of systematic racism within the recovery community. In the future, Soraya strives to create a world where new perspectives are valued and equity is the norm. Welcome, Soraya, and thank you so much. Okay, so now that everybody has been introduced, we're going to jump into some questions. So our first question today is, how has your personal experience shaped your perspective on inclusive environments? Anyone? Don't leave us out here hanging.
I guess I'll go. My personal experience, I feel like has shaped the nature for environments to become more inclusive, because a lot of people haven't met a trans person, and let alone it's very especially small in the recovery scene. So I think that, just meeting people and through my character and the way that I conduct myself and the way that the person that I want to be shows people that, trans people are normal too. LGBTQ people are normal too. We can live normal lives. We deserve recovery. And I think that that's important.
Thank you. Does anybody have anything to add?
Shanda, I think your mic's off.
You're muted.
Okay, is that better?
There you go. Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
So I'll share a little bit on that. My personal experience, which has impacted my perspective on being in an inclusive environment, is that for 20 plus years, I was stuck in a vicious cycle of substance use disorder. And also, I was a victim to mental health illness. And I tried to get into recovery and change my life several times, but it wasn't until I was able to open up to my family and to society about my sexuality that I was able to actually be authentic and have not had a return to use. And so I see the huge importance in people being able to be themselves in an environment where recovery is possible.
Thank you so much. Soraya, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, absolutely. I was just going to say, yes. Short answer, yes, absolutely. I definitely think that, I think the way that I grew up, I was definitely, tended to be the odd kid out. And it was, I definitely had both experiences where I was, living amongst other, kids who looked like me and things like that. And then I had experiences where it was quite the opposite, right? And so I think growing up on both ends of the spectrum, yeah, absolutely. It definitely colors not only how I see inclusivity, but what that looks like in my head, right? So absolutely, yeah, great question.
Yeah. So on the topic of inclusive environments, how would you describe an inclusive environment? What does that look like?
I think it's one that strives for equity, right? Which is such a amalgamous term. It's so vague, but but really I think it's one that acknowledges that the playing field isn't even, right? And that we need to account for that, right? And yeah, and take steps to rectify that once it's noticed.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Does anybody else want to add anything? So, yeah, go ahead. Sorry. No, you're
guess
good.
I'll go. I guess just kind of what Soraya was saying. Just realizing that the privilege that other people have above people that are othered is real, and sometimes just recognizing that and seeing what we can do to be an ally to each other, me as like a white person to a black person, or people, a heteronormative person to somebody like me that's transgender. I think that it all just matters if we all like literally come together as a unit, because we are all one thing as people, and stop like just trying to like categorize and be like, and see everybody as equal. I think that would make it better for an inclusive environment.
Okay.
So I saw a meme the other day, and it was, I speak shoes because I love shoes. And so I saw a meme on Facebook, and equality is everyone getting a pair of shoes. Diversity is everyone getting a different type of shoe. Equity is everyone getting a pair of shoes that fits. Acceptance is understanding we all wear different kinds of shoes. And belonging is where the shoes you want, you have without fear of judgment. And so, like, that made a lot of sense to me when I was able to put it in a term that I understood. And so, to me, an inclusive environment would be being places without fearing being your authentic self.
Right. Okay. So, what does it mean for a program to be unintentionally exclusive?
I think it can be a lot of things, and I
Okay.
think it's often things that get overlooked. Um, I like to think about accessibility, right? For
Mhm.
example, are you offering programs in a building that's wheelchair accessible, right? Like, is it near public transportation? Things like that, right? Is it being offered at a time that working parents might be able to go, right? Or are you only offering services during the middle of the day when people might be at work, or what have you? So I think it can be practical, right? Like, it can be just making it feel like a safe space, in the sense
Mhm.
of like literally making it possible for people to get there and to be comfortable in that space. But I think sometimes exclusion is also just not really going out of your way to be welcoming, right? And sometimes just doing nothing is exclusionary in and of itself, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does.
I think also, including people's family. Like, she spoke about, the time of day that you would have targeted audiences, but also, like, is there childcare offered? I know a lot of people have barriers in inclusive environments because, yeah, they may be included, but are there kids? And so I think that that's a really important factor, being a mother.
Okay. All right. And why are inclusive environments so important for substance use services and programs?
I'll say that I think that it is so important because I started, just for like a little tidbit, like I started coming into recovery for the first time in 2016, and I remember how othered I felt, how different I felt, and how weird I felt because I didn't fit into the regular norm of things. Fast forward, I went out for some more years, and I came back, and it was like, just a different plethora of people and accepting this, and oh my God, like that's amazing. Because there's not, it's important. It's important to feel like you matter. It's important to feel like you have a seat at the table. It's important to feel like there's nothing wrong with you for being you. It's, those things are important, and it gives you the motivation to continue on to say, hey, I can do that too. And whenever you see reflection of yourself in other people, it gives you like, oh my God, that person's doing that. Like I can do it too, because you feel like you can connect with them in some way. So I feel like it's extremely important to, have inclusivity and have people that are like you around, and people that aren't like you around too, so they can teach you something new. But that's what kept me going this time and this roundabout in recovery, because I seen other people like me. I see, I didn't feel othered, I didn't feel different, and that was really important, extremely important.
Wow, thank you so much, Jada, for sharing that. Do you think, like, what role does language and terminology play when you were going through your transition and creating safe space, sorry? And can you provide some examples of inclusive language that could have been used or can be used?
I guess like language would just be like, how do you feel about certain words? You know what I'm saying? Because ignorance can come in all forms. I've myself been ignorant at sometimes, and sometimes people just don't know. You know what I'm saying? They just don't know. So I
Yeah.
would just say asking people what they're comfortable with. Like I usually, like I have been in transition for 13 years, so I've been doing it for a long time. I don't get really offended by anything, but that's my story, right? Like that may not be the next trans woman. Like I say all the time, like us in the LGBT, we're not a monolith. We're not all one thing. Everybody's different. So I think it's just like trying to find what is okay people as a whole, like, and not just in the LGBT, not just people, and like just try to be the kindest, courteous person you can be, for people's feelings, because people's feelings do matter.
Thank you, Jada. Okay, anybody else want to add to that? I mean, she said a lot, so if you want to follow that, just jump right in.
It was very well, very well said.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. Okay. Are there any specific training programs or resources available for service providers to better equip them to address the unique needs of BIPOC and LGBTQIA plus individuals who use substances?
Oh, I have a good one.
Oh, yay.
Of course, I recently went through, this is available for free online.
Hmm.
It's called OBI University, and they have a really awesome course on bridging, which is all about connecting with people and perspectives that you may not understand or experience, right? Sometimes even people who you disagree with, or people who might hold views that you find offensive. It was a really mind-opening course. It was just really, yeah, really relevant. Yeah, so I would definitely recommend giving that one a try. Um, SAMHSA also has some really, really, really incredible resources available. And I also always like to recommend people look at Faces and Voices in Recovery. They also have a lot of really, really awesome resources, and they're also a really just incredible BIPOC-led recovery organization that have been around for a while. So,
Thank you so much. Thank you. How can harm reduction principles be applied to create safer spaces for individuals who use substances, and what challenges might arise in implementing these principles?
Okay, I definitely want to speak on this because I work for Voices of Hope, and we believe in harm reduction all the way around. I believe harm reduction is just supporting somebody's recovery journey, no matter what it may be. And I was even ignorant to this in the beginning because I did get through abstinence base and through AA. However, I feel like that not all human beings can do that. I've witnessed it firsthand. Some of my friends have got sober through MAT programs and harm reduction, and I've seen it change their life for the good, where they're able to hold a job, where they're able to do things. So I feel like just being there and understanding that all of our recoveries are not the same, and that is okay. just like we're not all the same as people. It's okay, and to accept that. Yeah, I feel like that's a good thing, just being there for people.
Okay.
I also really feel like harm reduction can go a long way towards sort of healing some of the damage caused by the war on drugs, right? For a very long time, there has been, well, there still is a big incentive to criminalize substance use disorder, right? And yeah, I really think harm reduction is one of our best ways to fight that. We have a lot of evidence behind it. We show that it benefits the people and communities that are using it well. And I really think that it can be one of the many pieces we need to really help drive that home, that this is not necessarily something that needs to be criminalized, that this is something that needs to be treated, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
I agree 100% with everything that they both said. Another thing is like, how can we be all inclusive if we're excluding people who have a different recovery path? Like, who am I to judge somebody else's recovery? And that's why places like Voices of Hope and Recovery Cafe are crucial in this war on drugs, because you may have stopped doing one drug and decided that marijuana is your way to go, and you're not going to be judged. And I think that's the beautiful part about harm reduction, is that non-judgmental of different pathways to recovery.
Oh wow. Thank you guys so much. Those were really helpful. And so talking about the different organizations that are helping with the war on drugs, what steps can these organizations take to actively monitor and evaluate the inclusivity and the effectiveness of their substance use services for BIPOC and LGBTQIA plus individuals? And how can this feedback be used to improve services?
I love to look at numbers.
Yeah.
Not really, but I have to. And so I think the best way is really to do an audit regularly of the people that you serve.
Mhm.
And I know that sounds so boring and nobody wants to do that, but the only way to really see what kind of an impact you're making is really to collect that data. And there are a lot of ways to do that. We use a software called the Recovery Capital Index, which
Mhm.
is actually a really nifty tool that participants can text into. It's a whole thing, but basically it gives us the ability to see who we're serving, right? And so my advice is, yeah, see who you're serving first of all, and then you can use that to see who are you not serving enough. Where do you need to make adjustments? Are there communities that you need to go out of your way to serve, right? Like what? Because sometimes communities come to you. Sometimes you have to go to them, right? And you're not going to know what communities those are until you really find that data and really dig into those numbers.
Thank you.
I think having a diverse population of staff is a
Yeah.
huge part of the inclusivity. And I can say for Voices of Hope and Recovery Cafe, they have a huge variety of people. Some people there utilize MAT, some people there are transgender. And so it makes it to where the community as a whole, they'll find somebody that can relate to them and make them want to come back. And I think that's really important for the community in general.
Yeah, definitely. So, what unique challenges do the LGBTQIA plus individuals face in accessing and utilizing substance use services? And how do you think that we can overcome these challenges?
Um, well, I'll speak. I'm not sure of the uh, current challenges, but for the whole LGBT, but I will say for my letter, the trans, I will say it sometimes there is certain challenges with housing, and like whenever somebody is trying to get into sober living, sometimes there's just comfortability issues. And I think that if we got more educated on trans people as a whole, we could eliminate that uncomfortability whenever it comes, because they need placement and housing too, whenever it comes to sober living and stuff. Also, I feel like a good idea, besides just educating people, is like to create choice houses, which, you know, could it be diverse. You know, if you want to be choose to be in the house, you can, and no matter what you identify as. And I just think, yeah, that's how I feel about that one.
Okay. Thank you so much, Jada. We appreciate it. Does anyone
I
have anything
also
else?
agree. I think more places for people of that community to go. More self-help meetings, more sober livings. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten phone calls from people that's a part of my community, and they don't know where to go. They're like, you know, I identify as a woman, but I'm technically still a man. I don't want to be in a men's house, but women don't feel comfortable. So I think having more options for transitional living and sober living and IOP for that population would be very beneficial.
Okay. So kind of tying into this question, how else can we ensure that substance use services are gender affirming and inclusive for transgender, and non-binary individuals? What else can we do? Yeah, go ahead.
I will speak and say that how it is education, like honestly education, because us as trans people and non-binary people, we are all literally the same. Whether somebody looks like me or whether somebody's like day one in their transition, long hair, and they don't like sound the most feminine or look the most feminine, it doesn't matter. Like we need to educate people, and so we can create that level of comfortability. So maybe we can, you know, have certain trans people access spaces that they need to access, because it is a safety concern for a trans person to go to a man's house and stuff like that. So I feel like we can create affirming substance use treatment by just like understanding, asking, creating a level of comfortability, education, things like that.
So besides education, I mean, education is key, but how else can we increase awareness of the unique experiences of people with disabilities who use substances, and what strategies can be implemented to address their specific needs?
I think
think
webinars.
Oh, yeah,
Like,
go ahead.
Yeah.
I think having webinars like this, and
Yeah.
if you're a huge social media person, consistently putting things about that on our social media. When people ask questions, be sure to educate them on being inclusive. But I really think the way technology is, like these type of things, these webinars, these summits, and Facebook and Instagram and all of that stuff is a really good way to spread the word.
Okay, good. Yeah.
I was gonna say we need to talk about it, which is
Yeah.
exactly what Shan said.
Great minds think alike, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely. So we're going to go back to questions about inclusive spaces. How can we ensure that unique experiences and cultural backgrounds of individuals are reflected in the development of substance use policies and programs?
We have to talk to them, and we have to
Yeah.
include them in those spaces. Um, I feel like this is something organizations trying to get around doing,
Hmm.
right? Like we try and read the books and we like hire consultants and we do all of this stuff except going into the communities and just like listening to them. But really, we just need to listen. We
Yeah.
just need to like create that cycle of feedback, right?
Hmm.
So that they're listening and we're doing, and then it just keeps going. And that's just going to be the easiest way to do it is just whatever that looks like. It could be a community advisory board. It could be a working group or what have you. Maybe you have volunteers or whatever, but really just asking them.
Okay.
I think
Okay.
going through local ASAP boards. I think though that ASAP boards have so many resources and outlets that if we start educating within those, word will travel fast. And also, there was something else I was gonna say. Being
Can you
open.
expand on ASAP boards for those who don't know what that is? I'm sorry.
I don't know the terminology, but it's basically resources from around the community that
Okay.
work together for a common end result, I guess would be a good.
Gotcha.
I mean, do
Okay.
you think you're familiar with them, correct, Brittany?
Yes, I just for other
Okay.
people that might not know what that is.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so another way that I was thinking would be that we stop tiptoeing around the words. Like
Mhm.
we say, hey, this is an urban group, like and it not being uncomfortable, trying to make
Mhm.
the uncomfortable comfortable, I think is a really good way to open those doors.
Yes, for sure. And so, how do you think we can better integrate trauma informed care into substance use services, particularly for BIPOC and LGBTQIA plus individual who often face multiple layers of trauma?
I think we need to teach our providers more about trauma, first of
Yeah.
all, but even more specifically about, things like epigenetics and about systemic trauma and about things like that. I just think that there's a really gross lack of knowledge in the public about that. I mean, like a lot of us, we talk about this stuff all the time, and I often forget that not everybody, does diversity work for a living, but most people
Mhm.
don't. And so they don't talk about things like systemic racism. They don't talk about things like the war on drugs. They don't talk about, um, it just doesn't come up. Right. And so I
Right.
think, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I could go.
Okay. All right. And can you discuss the importance of peer support, I'm sorry, and community-based models in creating safe spaces in the context of substance abuse
Uh,
or substance
yes,
use, I'm sorry.
I think that peer support is extremely important. I can only speak really on my journey, and I think that peer support was almost more important to me than case management, counseling, any doctoral or graduate certification that you could have obtained. A peer support was the most important to me because I needed to see people like
Mhm.
me that have had the same struggles as me with that same lived experience on the other side, living and doing the work and just, showing that you can recover. Because it's easy to pick up a book and read and say, oh, this is how I can be an ally or this and this and that. But until you see like you reflected, I know in my case, like it's not going to click the same.
Yeah.
So, I'm glad. I know it was extremely important for me in my journey to have peer supports around.
I would also like to add even further that for communities of color, for marginalized communities, peer recovery supports are even like just there's a whole nother layer of how invaluable they are because it's when they're led when you have recovery resources that are being led by members of that community for members
Mhm.
of that community,
Yeah.
right? It's immediately going to be a safe space, right? It's immediately going, there's no barrier to entry, there's no uh, you know, cultural divide. It's inclusive, right? And it gives you that some of that recovery capital and it helps you build uh some of the social supports that you need to just keep going, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely. So, what role do you feel that like cultural traditions and practices play in substance use treatment for BIPOC individuals, and how do you think we can integrate these into services? You're muted, Soraya.
I am muted,
Yeah.
yes. One of my favorite cultural traditions is so my family is Creole from New Orleans, and we service is really big. Just like going out of your way to serve your community, right? Community service, all of it, and that's like really widespread in. I mean, not only the African American community, but in a lot of marginalized communities. And there's actually a lot of research that shows that there's a really healing aspect, a really therapeutic aspect of uh, just service,
Mhm.
of just setting aside time to do something for somebody else, right? And Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, a lot of really incredible writers have spoken specifically about using things like peer recovery supports and using volunteer work and really like using that tradition of service as a way to heal specifically from substance use disorder. And yeah, I just find all of that really fascinating. So those are my thoughts.
Does anybody have anything else they would like to add? Okay. So how can we provide adequate support and resources for individuals with limited English proficiency to help them navigate the complex substance use treatment system?
Well, I would say a prime example is kind of like what we're doing now, like how we have the lady Kelly interpreting and stuff.
Mhm.
I feel like if we did that and we had those services readily available, as far as people with language barriers, people with hearing barriers, things like that, I feel like we're doing what we can, and I feel like it's a good example of what we're doing today.
Definitely. Does anybody have anything else they want to add? Okay. So I'm gonna ask if you have, I think that's all the questions that we have for our panel today. Is there anything that each of you would like to add in addition to all the wonderful questions that we've had? Anything that you would like to share in regards to this topic?
Yes, I wanted to say one final thing. I would say if you want to be an advocate to a person in the LGBTQ community, it can just start with making somebody just feel welcome and accepted and like they're not different. I know we need to embrace our differences and our uniqueness to people, but sometimes it can feel lonely, being different. And so just treating them like they're any other person, not like they're special because they're this or they're that, just like they're a person. And I feel like that's something good, or that's something that's always made me feel just being just like one of the girls, somebody else.
Yeah. Right.
I also want to add, right now is a very like divisive time in our society, in our culture, and this work in particular is a bit of a divisive button topic right now. Um, and so it can be really discouraging to be talking about these things and to be in these spaces and to be advocating for these things. And yeah, especially as somebody who lives in the deep South, I definitely just want to say uh, it's okay. It's advocates like you guys that keep the movement going even in crazy times. So don't let yourself get too discouraged, and make time for self-care in all of that advocacy work that you're doing.
Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Shonda, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Just be kind,
Yeah.
be kind to one another.
Yeah. So we do have a question in the question and answer portion. So it talks about you, Shanda, being a parent, and also changes. Let's see. It says, can you talk more about how to create inclusive spaces for parents?
Um, my wife and I started a self-help meeting 3 years ago, and one of the main ideas that we brought to the other individuals that were going to participate in getting it was like, childcare is necessary in this. Like, I wanted to make sure that, we're talking to these families that are trying to become a inclusive in their children's life again, but don't bring them to the meetings. You know what I mean? And so that was um a huge thing in determining like where we would have our self-help meeting. And now we have it, and we've got a volunteer who watches the kids every week so their parents can enjoy that hour of self-help time. My daughter actually keeps them in the nursery part of the church. So I think making sure to, if you're going to take the initiative to do things like that, keep in mind that people have children and that they're trying to integrate back into their children's lives, or they want to teach their children about inclusive environments so that we can have the trickle down effect on our children. And in the future, maybe we won't have to have these really hard conversations so much.
Yeah. Okay. How does accessibility look different for people with mental health conditions?
Good question.
That is a very good question. Maybe people that are having mental health situations, they might know of programs and resources to help them, but if they're in the middle of a mental health crisis, what does that look like for them? Do they have an advocate in the community? Do they know who to reach out in times of mental health issues, or are they stigmatized and pushed to the side, and from that they're not able to get the resources that they so desperately need? What does that look like?
I mean, are we doing our due diligence as human beings and getting to know our neighbors? Like, I know in my group of individuals that surround me, I can tell when things are off,
Yeah.
and being able to be that person that they would feel comfortable coming to and saying, "Hey, I'm off, and helping them through that."
Yeah. Jada, Soraya, anything you want to add? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I guess just recognizing patterns whenever somebody's off, like the slang in the AA world, I know, is like pull up on somebody,
Yeah.
to make sure they're all right, and yeah, I mean, check in on people because, I know there's been times where I have been way off. People and people have literally came up to me and was like, "Oh, I would have never known anything was wrong. Like, you come off so confident, you come off so this, so that." But like literally, I've been on the brink, So
Mhm.
pull up on your brothers. It's nothing. Just like, "Hey, how are you feeling today?"
Yeah. Okay. Are there any resources and training opportunities that are available to help managers and employees understand and embrace inclusivity?
Just be willing to look past your visual prejudices and hire people, be there for people. Asks, if you ask somebody how you can be there for them as a human without all the label stuff aside, as a human being, I think that is the first step you can take in being an ally.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else want to add? Yeah.
Mobilized Recovery is also another organization that this year is doing some really awesome webinars and trainings regarding this topic. I know they have one coming up, I think actually at the end of this at the like next week or soon, that's specific on the LGBTQ community and more. So that's another really great resource. And another one that I use for a lot of my research is the National Council for Mental Wellbeing. That's another really awesome nonprofit. They put on webinars, they put out toolkits, all sorts of information for people who work in the behavioral health space specifically. And they are really great. I think they even have some TA programs available potentially to maybe even get some internal trainings for your organization, that kind of thing. So those are both a couple of really great resources to look into.
Thank you so much. How do you think inclusive practices contribute to a positive work environment?
Oh, I have a lot of opinions on this.
Yeah.
I think, well, first of all, work sucks, right? Like nobody really
Yeah.
wants to work, right? I mean, we work because we have to. And I mean, I'm lucky that I have a great job and I love my job and all of that stuff. But my job is made better by the fact that I work for an organization that actively tries to be inclusive, right? And what that means is that, and sometimes that means things that people don't even think about. It means offering your employees PTO. It means making sure that you have policies in place for when your employees just need a mental health day. You know, it means making sure that you're uh, providing good health insurance for your employees and their families. It's making sure that you have good maternity and paternity leave in place. It's all of that. You know, it's making it a comfortable place to be employed so that, you know, like if somebody were to ask me, you know, would I recommend my job to one of my friends? I would say yes, because like I enjoy my job. Like my job takes care of me. And that's a really big part of being an inclusive organization. And then also you can just speak to like from a managerial perspective, it's going to increase your longevity, it's going to decrease your turnover, and you're just going to have happier employees who are productive and who work for you longer. Yeah, and then also other things like interning, you know, promoting internally, offering professional development training, you know, creating opportunities for advancements for all walks of life, just, you know, for all of your employees, giving everyone a fair shake, you know, all of those things. I could keep going, all of it.
Yeah. Anybody else have anything to add? Okay. Well, I think that's all the questions that we have for today. I want to thank you so much for being here with us, and I'm going to pass it over to Taylor, and she is going to, oh, I think we have another question. Sorry. All right. One more. Sorry. So, can anyone share their perspective on how individuals should address their inclusivity concerns in the workplace, specifically for management?
Yes, I would. Whoever your HR department is or your business operations department, they should be involved. And honestly, I think it's really just you just you got to be annoying about it. To be honest, 3 years ago, I wasn't even diversity director at Young People in Recovery. I had a different job entirely, and I just made enough of a fuss that we realized that there was a need for this role. And you know what I mean? So really it's just it's showing the research. It is putting in a lot of time to a lot of your own time sometimes to show how important the issue is. It's raising those concerns even when you know people don't want to hear them. It's yeah, it's going out on a limb and all of it, but it is valuable.
Absolutely. Leading by example is exactly what you should do in a situation like that. Like, um, taking that initiative to create the position that's needed was a huge step. And I definitely think that's great of you that you did that. But doing things like that within your workspace is the best way, I think, just to lead by example.
All right.
I agree completely.
Okay, let's see if we have more questions. Um, all right. Well, Taylor, if you are there, I think that is going to be it for us. I want to thank you all for sharing your stories and your experiences with us. And Taylor, there you go. Thank you.
So I want to give a major thank you to our beautiful panelists and our moderator today for leading this necessary conversation. We hope that everyone that has joined us today continues to educate themselves and continues the conversation of inclusivity and keeps this conversation going. So if anyone is interested in becoming involved with our Unshame Kentucky campaign, there are many ways. We do collect stories, so we do have a story collection interest form, as well as if you know that your organization would like to become a partner, we do partner with different organizations without Kentucky, and we would definitely be interested in getting to know you and working alongside your organization. You can also go and follow us on unshamekentucky.org to find further resources, as well as we are on Facebook, we are on Instagram and Twitter at unshamekentucky. And if anyone has any additional questions, please feel free to reach out to me. My email is at the bottom of the screen here. It is tgassett@shatterproof.org. Also, everyone, we did include a link to fill out a post survey. So we are open to everyone's feedback. So please feel free to fill out that form, as well as if you are interested in receiving a certificate of attendance, please fill out that survey as well, because that's a way to be able to access and let us know who all needs a certificate for attendance. With all that being done, we want to thank you all so much for joining us today on this Good Thursday, and we hope that everyone enjoys the rest of your day. And again, if anyone has any additional questions, please feel free to reach out to me or our team. Thank you, everyone.